I'm joined today by Daniel Adams, a Texas resident, a father and family man, and a former January 6th political prisoner. He's joining me today so he can talk about his story, what he's been through the past few years, and let's get right into this. Dan, thank you for being with me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're a fellow DC Gulagian. So I'd like to begin from the beginning, and that is who Dan Adams actually is. So who were you before January 6th? What's your background? What can you tell people about yourself?
So I come from blue collar worker. I was a pipe welder in Texas, probably close to 20 years. And then I got into inspection work and moved up from there. And now before January 6th, I was, working as a consultant for big oil and gas company here in Houston. And things were looking really good. I coached Little League Baseball and just live a simple life, make good money and pretty happy. Everything was pretty good.
So what was it that got you caught up in January 6th in the first place? So, what was your motivation for even being in D.C. that day?
Honestly, the motivation was not to protest a stolen election. I know that's what everyone just assumes that's what we were all there for. And, there was a Trump rally there. There were people there that were protesting the election. I had been watching the news for months and flipping back and forth from, CNN to Fox News, and I was getting two totally opposite stories of what's going on. There were claims about stolen election, and there were claims that there wasn't. And then all these Trump rallies that you would see on TV, the media would, certain channels would say that there was no crowd there, and then some other media outlets would say that, the crowds were huge. So honestly, I wanted to go to DC and see for myself how big these crowds really were, what the media would lie about. And I wanted to talk and ask questions to these people that are really convinced that the election was stolen. I'm a data guy. I want to gather up all the data before I come up with a conclusion. And, honestly, like I said, I went to DC, to go observe and learn. Just ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So you're actually you're hitting on something really important, and this is a very common thing in media, which is that there's controlled opposition, there's gatekeeping, there are echo chambers, and there are just narratives that get repeated over and over. And so, as you know, for the last 4 years, I think we all have kind of grown weary of this. A lot of what, and I would say the vast majority of what's been reported about January 6th has been nothing like what those of us who lived through it actually was like.
Right.
So if you could, I would like to actually get into what your day was like on January 6th from start to finish, because it seems that everybody who was actually there has a totally different story than what was reported.
So I had never been to Washington, D.C. I didn't know the layout. I'm not familiar with it. I went up to D.C. with my cousin. My younger cousin rode with me. We got to D.C. We jumped on the subway and it took us into town. Wasn't even sure where to get off on the subway. Just kind of, we were talking to people. There were other protesters there on the subway headed in, and we were having a good conversation, and it was great. And then I actually missed my initial stop on the subway, and I had to go. Ended up getting off a little bit later, which put me whenever I surfaced it. I got off the subway and I surfaced it. I was. If you're looking at the crowd, I was in between the crowd and the Capitol building. That's where I came out at. Just so happened. If I had got off the subway anywhere else, we would never have this conversation because I wouldn't have been at the very front. But I was overwhelmed with the size of the crowd and the diversity of the crowd. There were a lot of different ethnicities there. I saw gay people. I saw people with groups of blacks for Trump that were there. There were, people waving China flags, saying, don't turn America into China. There were big groups of it was a huge group of diverse people. It just really surprised me how many people were there and weren't just a bunch of redneck hillbilly white boys. It was just everybody. You would see blue collar workers. You see people in suits. They were just, everybody was there. And Trump, when he got done speaking, we started to walk towards the Capitol building. And like I said, geographically, I was at the very front of the line because of where I got off at the train. That was at the edge of the crowd. Well, the crowd was headed, east towards Capitol building, which that put me at the very front. So we started making our way to the Capitol building, and there were a few people putting on shows, and not shows, but they were, people bullhorns and doing the whole chanting stuff, and it was more entertaining than anything. I was taking videos and pictures and all, and I guess you could just kind of fast forward a little bit, and we were at the the steps of the Capitol building. They had this huge American flag that was just stretched out, like parallel to the ground. Everyone was holding it like you'll see at a baseball game or or a football game. And we were all holding this flag real tight, and they were singing national anthem, and it was a beautiful thing. And then I started hearing what sounded like fireworks going off. It sounded like artillery shells, and I could smell gunpowder. So I'm like, no, they're shooting fireworks. That's pretty cool, And you look around, and it's not fireworks they're shooting. They're shooting flashbang grenades into the crowd, and there's women and kids. There's old people. There's people in wheelchairs, and people are falling out. They got pretty fucked up from these flashbang grenades, and it was that, and they were throwing tear gas canisters at people, and I worked in refineries my whole life, and I've always been real conscious of the way the wind blows and how to avoid getting gas. And the wind was coming out of the north that day, and I took off to the north corner of the building, and made our way up the stairs, and I wanted to get myself as close as I could to the officers because it was going to be like a safer place to be. I don't see anybody shooting at the cops, So we had already seen people getting injured, and people were getting carted off. It was, honestly, I was kind of filled up with rage about the way these protesters were being treated. So, like I said, I made my way to the very front, and I had a verbal confrontation with an officer there, and nothing violent or nothing. Just like, I want to know, like, why are you doing this to these people? And all of a sudden, we all started. We decided to push up the stairs, and we pushed our way past the barricade and made our way to the front door. I don't know what we were going to do there, but in that time frame, I was either shot or I was hit over the head with batons. I know I was hit a few times with a baton, but my head was split open. I was bleeding out like crazy. There's a lot of pictures online you can see. So I was taking injuries. I was getting injured pretty bad. My shoulder, I got shot in the shoulder with a projectile. It got pretty rough, and I don't know if it was instinct or what, but I'm going to fight back. I'm not just going to take it. I distinctly remember there was a young girl. She had to be, I don't know, maybe 12 years old. She was about my daughter's age, about my daughter's size and everything, little thing. And her whole face and hair and everything was covered in that orange bear spray, where the officers had sprayed this girl down. And I'm a protective guy. I'm not, and not to mention, like I said, I coach Little League baseball. I'm around, I'm around kids, and I took it personal that this child was attacked along with all these other people, and things got out of hand. Tim, they got out of hand. I wasn't around anyone that, I felt like, really assaulting any officers or anything. I think it was more we were showing power and they were intimidated and they kind of ran away, like at the Capitol on the steps. And of course, once we got to the door, I was videoing and everything. There were suspicious people there. Didn't look like they were part of our group, but part of our crowd. There were people breaking windows and whatnot. And like I said, I was standing there at the front door, and a couple guys jumped through a window that was broke and broke the door open. The door came open. I stood there for a second, just watching. It was just a flood of people. It was like it was like standing in a river. And I just kind of stepped on into the Capitol building, and I'm holding my head trying to get the bleeding to stop. And me and my cousin were like, well, let's go find a bathroom or a break room or something. Let's go address this wound. So I was in that building for 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And in that time, I found an ice machine. I put some ice on my head. We were kind of dressing the wound best we could. I'm like, well, I got to get out of here because I'm going to bleed to death right here if I don't get out of here. And, like I said, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And we walked out, made our way back to the car and drove all the way to Texas. And like I said, I was only in the entrance area, and I went to this little break room. My attorney actually went to the Capitol building and walked the same route that I went. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, you literally walk down a hallway. Jacob Chansley was standing behind me when I walked in the Capitol, and then he walked. I had him on video on my phone, and of course I don't have the phone anymore. But I went straight to a little break room and found some ice in an ice machine, and put it on my head and hung out there for a little bit, and just I was like, all right, we gotta get out of here from the bleed to death, and so got out of there. 3 minutes and 15 seconds, dude. That was about my extent. I mean, there's a few small details that, don't have to necessarily get into, but that was basically my 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I didn't get into the rotunda or nothing.
3 minutes equals 4 years.
More than that is a lifetime. If it hadn't got a pardon, then I'm a felon for the rest of my life. And ended up getting charged and with assaulting 5 officers and obstructing official proceeding, and the charges didn't match what I did. Walked into a building 3 minutes and walked out.
3 minutes of heaven.
Yeah, I could have hung out on it a little bit longer if I knew I was going to go into prison anyway. But at this point, I didn't feel like I had really broken a law, maybe trespassing, or maybe get a ticket. I certainly didn't think that I had committed 4 felonies. And
from your perspective, do you had mentioned, there might have been maybe some infiltrators or provocateurs in the crowd. You'd also, pointed out that the police were really, I guess you'd call it excessive force. Was this like the perfect storm? Do you think people were provoked? Do you think, it seems like you'd say the crowd was largely reactive, not proactive. Would that be right?
Right. That's correct. I don't believe that 99% of the people that went to DC on January 6th, I believe 99% of them went there to have a peaceful protest. And most of them, including myself, had never been to a protest or hell, a Trump rally or any of that stuff before. You got to think, Texas and Florida were the states that had the most people that showed up over there. And Texas and Florida, everybody's got guns. We've all got guns. We've got piles of guns at our house. a million people show up to take over a government, don't you think we would have brought some of those guns at least? You know what I mean? But that didn't happen. To my knowledge, I didn't see any guns that got confiscated. I know there were people that were accused of having a gun, and with hardly any evidence. Guy Reffitt's one of them. There was no evidence of a gun, except part of a picture of looked like the bottom of a holster underneath his shirt. Like that's not a gun.
Right. Even if he had one, he's still never brandished one and never even attempted to use one, and so
exactly.
Yeah. Doesn't really check out.
Yeah, like I said, I've got an arsenal at my house. I mean, there's no way that it is unorganized, and it was just chaos, and no one planned on what happened. I don't even believe that people actually plan on going into the Capitol building as far as the crowd goes. I think it was just like, people joked about it. We're going to go in there. We're going to tar and feather Nancy Pelosi. Like, nobody brings tar and feathers to the, you know what I mean? It's just bullshitting, It's not, it hasn't. Hang Mike Pence. That was there when they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. And then as soon as the chant would stop, everybody would start laughing. It was just bullshit. Like you would see at a football game whenever, you go to Dallas Cowboy game and they're talking about hanging Tony Romo. They were just bullshit. It wasn't, no one planned on hanging anybody. You know what I mean? That's absurd.
You sure this wasn't 1776? Are you sure?
No, I'm positive. So, we didn't dump any tea in the harbor, none of that stuff.
There was a disturbing lack of tea at the Capitol. So really nothing happens for the most part. You witness the police get out of hand. You end up in the Capitol for less than 10 minutes. You actually are kind of the victim here. You have a gash in your head. You leave, and then you go home. And so, take us from this point on. How do things unfold from that point? How are you identified, arrested? Are you turned in? And what's going through your head after you leave? Like, what's really going on?
I mean, it didn't really get really out of hand, or like the crazy shit. We didn't really see it until afterwards. I was at the very, very front. Tim, I was at the very, very front, and it wasn't violent where I was at. It may have been violent other places. It may have been violent down at the Arch. I know that I saw videos of that. The same video they played on a loop for the last 4 years. But where I was at, the only violence was going on. It was towards the protesters, and it was like they were like just target practicing on people. It was sickening. Another thing that was brought up in court by my attorney is that I was the first one to leave the Capitol building. I was the first one to leave. Like, they failed to mention that. Like, I've been called the tip of the spear. I think you have too.
Everyone. Yeah.
Right. We've all been the tip of the spear. But they say that I led people up the stairs, and they said that I led them into the building. But no one says that I led them outside whenever I went out, when I left the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How can I be responsible for these people and they quit following me all of a sudden, Bullshit.
That's a brilliant, that's actually a really good point. There's never any concrete nexus between one protester or another until it's useful. The double standards that prosecutors make, it's palpable.
Double standards is so. Like I said, my defense, we're trying to make me look like a good guy and all this in court, and trying to show all these, great things that I've done with my career and in the community and blah blah blah. And I coached Little League baseball, and I want to harp on that a little bit. I mean, that's I'm proud of that. Something that I was a part of. Well, the prosecution turned it around and said, although Daniel Adams didn't have a weapon, he used his leadership skills that he learned on the baseball field to use to rally the crowd into using them as a weapon. Like I would do and they said like I would do the kids on the baseball field. They use my baseball coaching abilities as what I used as a weapon. I used tactics that I learned on the baseball field. I'm like, how could you turn that shit around like that?
It's ridiculous. Jeffrey Sable. I remember I was reading some of the bond motions for his case, and it's funny. They claimed that he was a danger because they alleged that he played rugby and he used his rugby skills to fight the cops.
Yeah. Right. But I couldn't use my same baseball skills to guide the people out of the building or to keep people from damaging the building when we were in there. Because I remember when I was in there were people that were standing in front of statues and documents, and they were standing there with their arms folded saying, no one is going to destroy this building. I remember specifically people were saying, this building is sacred. We're not here to tear nothing up. We're here to protest. Do not tear nothing up. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that really got tore up is, Nancy Pelosi's place. But, that's to me is there's nothing in her office. It's a historical document as far as I'm concerned. But you know what I mean? There were people in there doing the right thing.
I think the most ancient thing in Pelosi's office is probably her Scotch collection. But I don't want to tell any tales out of school here. So when you do leave, what unfolds from that point? You said you basically left and then you drove home. What happens then?
I had my cousin with me, and he I drove first. I was pretty sure I had a concussion. I couldn't complete sentences. I really didn't remember a whole lot. But take for instance, when I was in the building, my wife called me to tell me that the people had just breached the Capitol building, and I was like, yeah, no shit. I'm in here. I don't remember even having this conversation.
It's like maybe they should. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have hit you in the head. I don't know.
I have a huge scar on my head. Well, it's 2 scars actually. So I was hit twice. It takes a day and a half, 2 days to get home. I dropped my cousin off in Louisiana, and I come on home, and I'm home for 10 days, and I get my house raided. My wife and my daughter were home at the time. I got a phone call earlier that day from my cousin that was with me. His father called me and said that Cody, my co-defendant, said Cody was picked up today by the FBI. I'm like, you're kidding me? Like, we didn't do anything. Like, no, he was picked up by the FBI. They raided his house and picked him up this morning, like 30 minutes ago. And I'm like, that don't sound right. Maybe there's something else. I don't know. I don't believe this. And I was even told by family members, like, you need to like go to deer camp and hang out for a little while, and until things cool off. And I'm like, I don't believe that I committed a felony. I might get a ticket or something. But I guess about an hour later, I had a neighbor of mine call me and said a whole bunch of FBI agents just passed his house, headed my way. I lived at the time, in a rural area, dead end road, and he had told me they were coming. So I knew the FBI were coming to arrest me, and I was outside actually working on my fence, and went in the house, got me a drink of water, told my wife, I was like, hey, sound like they're on their way. I told my daughter, like, everything's gonna be fine. They're gonna take, I'll probably get arrested. They'll take me to jail, and I'll be out in a couple of days. I'll be out by the weekend's over. And no big deal. Everybody, it was gonna be all right. And I walk outside, and they had my house surrounded. They had a SWAT team and FBI, U.S. Marshals, everybody. They had my house surrounded. They had detained the people that were outside, my neighbors that were outside. It was a nice day. There were people outside. We lived on a private lake. They were detaining them people at gunpoint, my neighbors. And I walk out on the porch. My hands are up, and I'm like, hey, y'all, I'm going to make this real easy on you. Like, I'm not, look, here you go. Nope, everybody calm down. Guns drawn, assault rifles drawn, if you want to call them that. They tell me to get down. I get down. I do everything they say. They come up on the porch, handcuff me. All right, no big deal. My wife's kind of standing at the door, and I'm like, all right, look, we're good. I'm going to make it easy on you guys. I'm not, And next thing I know, they detained my wife and put her face down on the ground, put a knee in her back, and handcuffed her. And she had nothing to do with anything. And they had us both detained. They pick me up, take a picture of me real quick, put me in a cop car. Then, while my wife is detained, these SWAT members and FBI, they go into my house. My 12-year-old daughter is in her bedroom. She's scared. They go in there. They go in there with machine guns in her face, drag her out of her bedroom, and put her outside. And I really have a problem. I really have a problem with that. There was no sense in that. My daughter, she's spent several years in counseling. You couldn't even say her name without, if you yelled her name, you can't, it would, I don't know, it triggered, that memory or whatever, and so, like I said, I had a real problem with the way that they handled the arrest. Of course, they took me away, and then my wife and my daughter, they told them they needed to leave, and then they spent 9 hours in my house rummaging through everything. They took all my weapons out of my house. I took 29 firearms out of my house, every computer and all my phones, hard drive, any digital cameras or recording devices. They took everything that will hold data. They took it all. They took my daughter's school computer. They took everything that record data. They took, and then of course they ransacked my daughter's bedroom. They dug through her panty drawer. She's a 12-year-old girl. Her bedroom's sacred. I have a real problem with the way they handled this. There's no excuse for the way they did. We didn't live in the hood. We didn't have, a criminal background, whatever. I didn't show any kind of, resistance or anything. I cooperated with them. There was no sense in them doing what they did. And I'll never forgive them for that. And people that know me, that if I tell you I'll never forgive you for something, then that's, there's nothing you can say to make it better. So that's, so they arrest me. I had this long mullet when I got arrested. I had grown my hair out because it was hunting season, and I've spent a lot of time in the woods from October to January, and I grew my hair out. And I had this mullet, and when I was first got in jail in Texas, and I was in this holding tank with a couple other guys, and they're watching the news, and they're seeing this this whole January 6th stuff, and they're teasing me about it, giving me a hard time. And they're like, I was like, hey, breaking news. Look like hold on, let me say this so you start over. I always said, yeah, hey, breaking news. Billy Ray Cyrus just tried to kill the president. I'm like, you need to shut up, man. And while I was in there was this skinhead in there, and he said, we're going to fix up your haircut. He said, they won't let us out to get a haircut, but they would let you shave. They would bring razors to you. And he said, I'll make some clippers out of a razor blade. So he takes the razor blade out of the head of a razor, and he stuck it in a comb, some of the flat combs, and bent the teeth up on this. And I'm like, I don't feel good about this at all. But he stuck this razor blade in this flat comb, and he made these scissors, and he gave me one of the best haircuts I probably ever had. In the 15 minutes we were supposed to be shaving, and then he had to take the razor and put it back into the razor holder thing, and turn it back in, and here, now I show up and I'm not Billy Ray Cyrus anymore. Now I look like, like a Marine or something. And but it gave me a good haircut. This is crazy as hell. They took me to an ICE detention center in Livingston, and was there for a few days, and still don't have a lawyer. Ended up spending 26 days in transit between my time of arrest and the time I ended up in the D.C. jail. I bounced around probably all the same jails you went to, Northern Neck, Virginia, and Grady County,
Oklahoma.
Yeah. They flew. Well, I was in Livingston for a little while, a few days. They picked me up, took me down to the Ellington Air Force Base down in Houston, and they flew us to Oklahoma, and then I was in Oklahoma for a little while, and then they ended up, shipping us to D.C. I wrote I don't say a chapter, but a little small story, and it was about my experience on Con Air, and my wife read it, and she's like, "This is some like the best reading or best writing that she's ever read." I'm horrible at writing. I don't understand. They had me next to a serial killer, and he had this metal box over his hands, and he was talking about how he was in there for capital murder. He killed a couple of people and stuck a fillet knife behind their ear, stabbed them in the brain, and he was telling us all about it. And he was going, he had a 160-year prison sentence in D.C. And so I'm sitting there next to this serial killer, and the plane lands during this ice storm, and I'm so detailed in this. I remember it so detailed, and talking about the crunching of the sound of the snow when they let us go to the Portacan after we got off the airplane, and the chains, and well, I don't know why the Con Air flight. When you say Con Air, you think about the movie, and it really wasn't like that at all. There's this guy that was trying to bite me and spit on me and stuff. Black dude, he was hallucinating.
He's trying to bite you?
Yeah, he was trying to bite me. And I was in jail with this guy, too, in Oklahoma. And, he was trying to bite me. He wouldn't, I don't know what was wrong with him. And then after the flight, he introduced himself to me like he never saw me before. And he don't remember any of that shit. It's fucking crazy, dude. Even the guards on the plane were like, "You two got history?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've never seen this dude for my life." And he kept biting, telling the guards that, he ain't going to sit next to me. And I'm like, "I don't fucking sit by me anyway, Put him by the serial killer." But, he's an old school black dude. And he was always in there shadow boxing in the jail and talking to himself, and just crazy motherfucker, man. But yeah, and on the runway, I was there with Jessica Watkins and a few other people, and in my line of work, I had to do what's called Hewitt training, where it's a helicopter crash training course to work offshore, and they put you in a simulator and they put you out in the water upside down, and you got to get out and all that stuff. Well, they show you in this course how to survive in cold water, because if you crash into the water, you got to survive in this cold water. So I was using these tactics because they marched us out on the runway, waiting on this plane, and we were out there for had to be like a fucking hour and a half, and we were about to freeze to death. And I said, all right, let's all get in a huddle, one person get in the middle, and we rotate out. Everybody, 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. And we were keeping each other warm that way. And we were in the middle of this ice storm. It was on Super Bowl Sunday night. And the next morning, actually, it was the middle of the night. But it was that big ice storm that come through. We were on the runway of this plane, and waiting on this plane. And I thought I was going to freeze to death. People were wearing shower shoes. I was wearing, I had shower shoes on, but I had hardly nothing on. There were people in there with flip-flops on in this ice storm. We're going to fucking freeze to death out here. But I wrote a bunch of shit about that. And up until today, I hadn't even thought about that up until today. I kind of forgot about it. I forgot about it, but I don't know. So we'd all ordered commissary because we didn't know how long we were going to be there. and the commissary was going to come up like the next day. So we were hoping we'd get commissary and we'd have something to eat during the Super Bowl. And we'd already made friends and stuff in there. We'd been in this big pod with 30 fucking people. And, like, there were a few crazies in there. This Colombian guy got in a fight with this black dude, and which worked out good because they got removed. And then the tension went down. Everybody was cool. Like the blacks and the whites, everybody was getting along great. And we were all getting excited. They had one TV and we're gonna watch Super Bowl. And, we watched Super Bowl that night and we were up. We didn't go to bed. We were up watching the game. And after the game, everybody's, still hyped up. And I don't even remember who played. And then, but during that, like right before the game, it was actually right before the game, they came in there and they called out, like 6 or 8 of us to get swabbed, or to get a COVID test. And like, they're like, oh, you're getting COVID test. It means you're flying out of here tomorrow. They're like, no way. And I was in there with Guy Reffett, and I was in there with Chris Greider, and they didn't get swabbed. And I'm like, why did I get swabbed and these other people didn't? We're all January 6ers. And I was the only one out of that pod that was removed. That was a January 6er that got moved that night. And like I said, it was after the game. We stayed up and playing cards and just bullshitting and just hanging out. We were like, football kind of brought the whole pod together. Like, it didn't matter if you were black, white, Mexican. Like, we all watched a football game together, and everybody was cool after that. And the temperature went down, and then that night they came in there. Had to be like 2:00 in the morning, and they're like, they called like 6 names out. They said, "Hey, roll your shit up, and put it by the door." And I'm like, okay, they're gonna move us in the middle of the night. Well, I moved my shit. And I rolled my stuff up and put it by the door, and then I was sitting there for like 3 hours. And it had to be like 5:00 in the morning when they finally came and got us. And when they come and got us, and they come and got us, and they took us down there. That's when I met Jessica in a little holding area. And so I met Jessica Watkins down there, and I'm like, I had been to prison and jail. I've been to jail a couple of times for some bullshit, regular stuff. But I never like been in real trouble. And so here's this Jessica Watkins is there, and she's saying that she was an Army Ranger, and she's a oath keeper, and she's one of the January 6ers. And I'm like, man, it's crazy that they're they're. I thought legitimate was a female. I didn't know at the time. I guess I grew up in the country. I'm used to seeing all that, but I thought it was a girl the whole time. And so we get to Oklahoma, and we're in Northern Neck. Is it Northern Neck?
Northern Neck, Virginia, right before DC.
Yeah. We left Oklahoma, got to Northern Neck, and we're there. And that guy that got shot in the face, his last name was Black. Joshua Black.
Joshua Black, yeah. Yeah.
So they kept us together, but I don't know if his name was Black and my name was Adams, and alphabetically, because they'd always say Black Adams. I'm like, I'm white. But they kept us together, right? And he's sitting there telling a story. I don't remember what the story was. He was just talking, telling a story, and all of a sudden he just pulls his pants down, sits on the toilet, and starts taking a shit right in front of Jessica Watkins. And it was Jessica sitting on a bench right in front of the toilet, and then it was Doug Jensen, and it was me, and then there was a whole bunch of people standing around. I mean, it was just packed full of people, and I was like, Black, dude, what the fuck, man? He's like, what? That shit, And I'm like, dude, have some fucking respect, man. There's this chick right here, and that's when Doug leaned in and told me. He's like, Daniel, you're kidding, right? I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, that's a trans person, I didn't even know what you call them. I was like, holy shit, I didn't even fucking know. Like, I thought they kept us together because we're Trump people, and I didn't know. Like, I didn't know it was not a biological male. I don't know what if you look like a girl and present yourself like a girl, I mean, I guess to me, you're a girl. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a judgmental person, you know, and I'm kind of, I guess, delirious when it comes to that kind of thing. My wife took me to Las Vegas one time, and yeah, I was confused. I was like a duck on a chicken truck. What's going on? Yeah. So yeah, after Super Bowl, yeah, I almost froze to death. I'll have to get you that. I'll have to look at it. Every now and then I'll be digging around with some boxes and stuff, and I'll have it. It's in a big envelope, and it's all my writings and stuff. And I don't know. It's kind of like painful for me to read it. You know, it's like almost like I want to close this part, chapter or whatever. But I don't know. I guess I need to. I wanted to look at it and rewrite it, make it. I mean, it's wrote on. These stories are wrote on back of envelopes and back of, you know.
Yeah.
Medical card. You know, you fill out these medical cards where if you're sick or something, you put in a request to see a medic, and they never got answered. You know, the only time I went to the medic, it was actually the FBI who wanted to talk to me. I don't think they have doctors here.
No, they had like nurses, or they had guards that would like pretend to be doctors. You know, there's no medical care there.
I remember I have real bad tinnitus in my ears. My ears ring horribly bad. And also I just had cataract surgery. So my eyes were all jacked up too. So anyway, I did get to talk to a nurse, and she gave me some eardrops, and she was a sweet black lady. And she's like, yeah, just put 3 drops in your ear every night. I'm like, how can I don't know how many drops is 3, because I can't see. You know, I need you to do it. You know, she's like, you a hot mess, boy. It's funny. I can't see, but you know, there's no mirrors in the in our cell.
Right. You either had that metal mirror that was foggy and scratched up, or you just
mine
had
was all rusted. Yeah, mine was all rusted. Has anyone talked about how we had to use Nair to shave with?
Oh yeah, burn the hair off your face.
Yeah,
but hey, at least it was women's Nair, so it was delicate.
I don't know, man. I don't. This shit I had wasn't no delicate stuff. No. Maybe they gave mine to Jessica Watkins or something. I don't know. That shit was like battery acid.
Yeah, everybody that used it ended up getting like boils and stuff on their faces if they used it to shave their face. Some people would use it for their like their heads, you know, to be cue balls. But yeah, it was not good. I actually had to use that once during the week of my trial because they wouldn't give me haircuts.
Right.
That was like a year and a half into it. So I was like, yeah. But like it's funny, like after that point though, then they started letting us get haircuts like once a month. So
I know they said that they blamed it on COVID, and they were like, well, if you get this COVID shot, then all your problems will go away. You know, you'll get your haircut and you get to go outside. And it's like, why are you bribing me to take a shot? That was another thing. Is that we had these little AM/FM radios so I could listen to the news a little bit. And all I kept hearing about on the news is there's this big shortage of COVID shots. And like the elderly people were griping because they didn't have COVID shots for them. And then, you know, here comes these ladies with the cart hollering COVID shot. They bring all the COVID shots to all the prisoners. I'm like, how are we able to have access to these COVID shots? But the people that need them are the people that are trying to get them. They don't have access to them. So I'm like, I'm not taking that shit. I don't know what it is. I never took it.
Me neither. It was just a way to hold. It was just a way to hold our rights hostage. You know, they, like you said, you know, no religious services. No, take the shot. Can't see your lawyer. Take the shot. And there's like a lot of it. Most of the people who took the shot, I think it was like a handful. They still didn't let them do anything. They just lied. They just lied to get him to take the shot.
Yeah, I wasn't falling for
Yeah.
I know you're desperate and you're going to be like, well, if it's a long shot, I mean, whatever, I'll do whatever I got to do. But I'm like, I don't know. I ain't taking it.
No.
And there were people that, there were people in there before we got there that were, they were dying of COVID in there. Another reason why the jails were somewhat empty, because of COVID, they were sending a lot of people home, making room for us, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you had heard this, but some of the guards actually told us, they told us that they actually cleared that part of the jail out for us weeks before January 6th. They knew they were going to be housing us there. So that adds up to the whole setup aspect, is that they knew they knew ahead of time. You're right. It was a condemned wing, and it was basically an insane asylum. That's why it was called CTF, Central Treatment Facility, instead of CDF, the detention center. And I don't know about your cell, but mine and a few others, there was feces and hair clumps and stuff jammed into the corners of the beds and the walls and stuff. It was a nut.
They were nasty.
Yeah, they knew we were going to be there, so yeah, they had us there for a special reason.
I can't attest to that, but I do know that that's the sinks were porcelain sinks and real rusted up fittings. I remember you could hear the pipes and everything. It was they weren't these stainless outfits that they have at every other jail. These were really, really, really old. They look like something you see off a Green Mile. The algae and stuff coming out of the faucets, and partially, but probably because of these weren't stainless steel; these were all old porcelain fittings and whatnot. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
yeah,
I know. Yeah, I guess you lived there.
There's just crap that came out of the faucets. The insides of the toilets sometimes they had mold. I had mold on the vent on my wall, and and later on, when people would start inspecting the unit, they would actually just start painting over it like that. They were so late, they would paint over rust, and they would paint over the mold that was in the showers and everything. They would just paint over it. It's just inspection time.
Yeah.
They would get a heads up there was going to be an inspection, and they would literally just cover it up. There's no problem here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Well, like I said, with C2A, I'm not so much on C2B, or maybe that wasn't facing the sun as much, but I know the walls had no insulation. They were hollow walls. I'm a welder. I'm construction worker. I'm a welder. I build shit out of metal, and I pay attention to construction. And these walls had no insulation in them. So, or if they had, it had been deteriorated or whatever over the years. But there was nothing stopping the temperature from going up and down. And then of course, it's shady inside there. So if you have moisture and cold and damp and wet conditions, then you're going to have mold and water dripping. The water dripping just drove me fucking nuts. And your blanket would get wet, you have to hang it up and try to get it dry before you went to sleep again. But if you didn't have your bed made, you wouldn't be able to let out for your 1 hour phone call. So it was a shitty place, Tim.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis.
And get to DC, and I'm starting to. I've already met a few other January 6th defendants in Oklahoma, and they were giving me their stories of things that happened, and things that'll probably never come out in the history books. Some horrible things that happened, and like I said, ended up back in DC when we got there. They were booking us in, and I was asking them, hey, what are you going to do with us? We're going in a general population. What are we going to do? And I remember the guard or the guy doing the intake. He stopped writing and looked up at me and said, "Oh, we got a special place for you Trump people." And that's why he just stopped. He's like, we got a special place for you, for all you Trump people. And so I guess I'm Trump people now.
What do you mean, you Trump people?
Yeah, what do you mean? And so, yeah, and they certainly did. We ended up going to C2B, or C2A, rather, for a couple of weeks for our COVID protocol. But when we got there, I mean, jail was horrific. It was an area of the jail that looked like it had been used for storage or something. And the only thing I could think of, the back walls, especially on the jail cells, were covered in mold. And what I figured is the reason why, and the reason why they don't use this section of the jail, is because these cell walls were exterior walls on the building. So when the sun would come up, it would warm up that metal, and then when sun would go down, it would cool off. So it would constantly be sweating. So the back wall, if you remember, Tim, the back walls were always wet. They were always sweating. And this was in the wintertime. So there was a big swing in temperature from daytime to nighttime. So if you were there at night, you would just water be dripping on you, all the time. Sometimes I'd sleep on the floor to get away from the wall, which you'd get in trouble for that. But, I mean, that's the conditions. I'm sure other people have described conditions and the conditions. You were there. I mean, we got through it. I was there for a couple of months and ended up getting my bond granted, partially because I believe that I agreed to testify against the jail on an assault that happened on an inmate in there named Ryan Samsel. And I'm probably not supposed to tell the story, but I'm going to. Ryan Samsel was in there, and he's an ex-Marine, pretty tough guy. Probably one of the toughest guys that was in that pod. And I think the guards wanted to make an example with him for everyone else. And the guards kept messing with him and doing things just to irritate him. I remember Ryan was asking for some toilet paper from one of the COs, and he wouldn't give it to him. And I could see his cell from my cell, and because we had like a window, and I could see his cell. And I remember his guard was like had the toilet paper outside, like taunting him. You know what I mean? It's like you're trying to irritate him, and he ended up giving him toilet paper. But later like the next day or next shift, I remember there was an officer coming there, CO. His name was Officer Hayes. I don't know if you remember him or not, but Officer Hayes was not a fan of us Trump people, and he got into a verbal confrontation with Ryan, and I'm pretty sure Ryan called the guard a particular word that you wouldn't call a black person whenever unless you want to get in trouble. And let's just say it. I mean, Ryan called him the N-word, right? And because he's mad. So Officer Hayes, he steps back and he says, I remember. He said, all right, you go into the cell. I don't remember which one it was, cell 14 or
it was 24. One. The one at the end.
It was 24. Yeah, it was 24. I knew it had a 4 in it. Cell 24. And he said, there's no cameras down there. And he bragged about, you're going to go down there and commit suicide. And I heard him say this. And later that day, they come in there, and that cell 24, it was full of like furniture, chairs and whatnot.
It was ugly rubber.
Those rubber
green chairs.
Yeah, like Teletubby furniture. And that's what it looked. And I remember moving all that stuff out, and I was like, oh shit, man, they're gonna move Ryan down there tonight. Like it's gonna be bad. And sure enough, they moved him, and then the next day, I get out for my 55 minutes of rec time, where I can use the phone, take a shower, and clean my cell. And I could hear Ryan. He's calling me. He's like, hey, Adams, come here. And he's usually wanting to bum coffee off of me, and I would take coffee and put it in an envelope, slide it under the door for him. And And I was like, I'll get it. How you on, Ryan? I'll come over there in a minute. And I went and got on the phone, and I'm talking to my wife, and he's still hollering for me. He just kept hollering my name, and because he could see me from his cell at the phones, and my wife was even like, "Oh, what's Ryan want? You ain't getting no coffee today?" I said, "No, I'm gonna give him some coffee," because I already told my wife, story, made friends with some of these folks, and and I hung up the phone and I went over to his cell. I'm like, "Hey, what's the matter, man? Need some coffee or something?" And when I saw this man, he didn't look human. I don't know if you saw him, Tim, but his face was like a stop sign. It was his cheeks, his cheekbones were out of place. His nose was broke. His eyes were bleeding. I'd never seen a man that looked that bad as far as being abused. And he got the shit beat out of him. And I was like, oh my God. And I said, what happened to you? And he brought both of his hands up and he showed me the burns on his wrist where they zip tied him that night. And this is what happened. I don't care who says, I know what happened. And I got to make this shit up. He showed me his wrists where they were burnt from the zip ties from him struggling. And I immediately hollered it. Like Dominique Pizzola was out, and so was Big O. Richard Burnett was out, and I hollered at him, "Hey, y'all get over here!" And because they only let us out like 4 or 5 at a time.
Right.
Anyway,
yeah.
They come to check on Ryan. I remember ran back over to the phone because the clock's ticking. I got to hurry up and get the word out. So I called my wife, and I told my wife, Tanya, you need to get a hold of my lawyer, Gary Proctor, and you need to get a hold of Ryan's attorney and let him know that Ryan's been assaulted. He was it looked like they tried to kill him. Like it looked like they just beat him to a pulp. And hang up the phone and call right now. Like, we got to get EMT down here before he's going to die. And she of course I hung up the phone. I didn't talk to her again, for a couple of days. But of course, within an hour, medics showed up. They picked up Ryan. They took off. They took him out. And I haven't seen Ryan since then in person. But I know that from my wife talking to his wife with his list of injuries and everything, like he was jacked up pretty bad. I believe he had broken orbital bones, his broken jaw and broken nose. He was messed up bad. And I did an interview a few days later with an FBI agent that was doing an investigation on that attack. And I told the agent everything that happened. And he said, well, would you testify this in a grand jury? And I was like, yes, yeah, absolutely, I will. And I'm prepared to testify. However, with me talking to these people, talking to these FBI agents, I mean, I'm going to have a bounty on my head when I get back over there. And I believe my attorney used that to help get me out of jail. And I think that contributed to me getting out of jail. My bond was, I was denied bond. I was supposed to be in there until trial.
Yeah. And
after that, I ended up getting out. I stayed out of jail. Actually, I never went back. We managed to drag out the court system, if you will, all the way up until we got the pardon.
Did you ever feel targeted by any particular guards? I know we covered the Samsel thing, but with Hauser and Hayes, or no, Hayes or Hayes. Did you ever feel like they were coming at you?
I feel like they tried a few times. Officer Hayes, he liked to play mind games, and man, I for the most part I would ignore him, or I'd play his game, and then one day, he started talking about my family and things, and trying to get a reaction, and I don't know, he did something pissed me off, and I don't know if you remember this, but I went off on Officer Hayes and told him that I was freer than him because in his mind, he's still a slave. He's a slave, and he'll never be free. I told him, I said, all these men that are behind these bars right here will die on their, the old saying that all these men would die on their feet before they'll live on their knees like you. And I ripped his ass pretty good. And I remember Dominic Pizzola. He was just shitty, man. He went off. He was my cheerleader on that one. But I went off on Officer Hayes, and I told him, you'll never be free. You're always you're going to be a slave in your brain. You'll be in prison in your brain. Because he kept saying, yeah, I got pulled over by the cops today. I got pulled over for driving while I'm black. And I was like, well, you blame everything on being black, so you have an out, so you don't have to be successful, right? I fuck with him back, but I don't feel like I was ever disrespectful to him or anybody else. So I don't feel like that I was targeted. And a lot of, our Florida Mike, that was this big thing is treat these guards with respect. You don't have to like them. You don't have to be nice to them, but you can be shitty to somebody and still be respectful. And that's how it was. And, I didn't get jacked with a whole lot. I didn't get messed with a whole lot, compared to some other guys.
Yeah. Well,
they probably messed, didn't they? They probably targeted you since you was little Hitler.
Well, Hayes, in particular, he would, he took me to a court hearing over Zoom or whatever, and he was calling me Hitler to some of the guards or whatever. He was reading the court documents from my case, which he's not supposed to be doing, and he was sharing my personal information with their guards, to impress some female officers or some shit. I don't know, but yeah, he was a bastard. He ended up. You remember Cash Kelly? He ended up fucking with Cash, and he ended up getting reported. So they ended up taking him off the unit. He stopped showing up after a while. It was a weird dynamic after that, because the jail would fuck with us, but after that point, it was a lot of the guards started warming up to us. It was just the upper brass that mostly fucked with us, and they would force a lot of, because a lot of them were immigrants, so on visas or whatever, so they would force the Africans to fuck with us, or they would get in trouble, these the lesbian majors and captains and whatever, sergeant general, whatever. They would fuck with their foot soldiers and force them to come in and fuck with us. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I think a lot of them warmed up to us after the first year, so it got better.
You say the first year. How long was you in there, Tim?
I'm gonna say almost 2 years. It was I got arrested January 15, and I didn't go to prison until November of 2022. So I left in November of 22, and then I spent a year. I spent another year in prison on Fort Dix here in New Jersey. It's kind of funny because I actually worked on Fort Dix in the Army. That was my job. But they have a prison complex on the base. And I actually had thought about working there when I was in the Army. Everybody would tell me I should get a job there as a contractor, as a guard, funny enough. Because it was supposed to be this white collar prison. And then I get there and it's all fucking sex offenders and illegal aliens and junkies. It is just an interesting combination of white collar workers. It's okay.
Yeah. Just don't.
Well, it was a low security. So I mean, at the end of the day, I had plenty of time to just sit around and read. So that was how I used most of my time. It could have been a lot worse. Some of the guys that ended up going to big boy prisons, they did not have it as easy as I did. So I'm grateful for what I ended up having to serve, I guess.
I remember listening to Jessica Watkins playing chess with other inmates that were in other cells, and they were screaming through the vents. I guess they both had a board in their own cell because they were by themselves, and it was just all night long. It would be Alpha 1 to Bravo 3, with the military alphabet. And now every time I hear military alphabet, I think about that. It's crazy. They played. If you remember, they played chess like all the time. I don't know who she played with, but I remember. I just remember I'd hear that alphabet. Still to this day, when I hear it, I think about that.
It's funny. She was actually playing it with this kid named Michael Lanham, who was a chomo. He was this pedophile that they snuck into the pod with us. He wasn't a J6er. It was a skinny short kid from New York. He had come with me, Jake Lang, and Mike Hergio from Northern Neck. He was on the ride with us, and he was just hidden in the pod the whole time. It was, and then he got written out. But yeah, it was pretty remarkable as the way we were able to communicate. If people couldn't use the vents, they would just yell through the walls. It was
right. And yeah, I know when we sang the national anthem. We first had the little AM/FM radios we'd buy on our commissary, and I guess it was 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. I don't remember, but there was a radio station that played the national anthem, and I don't know I know you and Jake and myself and I guess a few others. We would listen to it, and then it kind of evolved into we would sing it, and I would lay down flat. I know a lot of the guys lay down flat in front of the door. There's a soundproof door, but there was a gap under the door, so we would sing the national anthem under that gap of the door.
Mm.
Yeah, so, and I swear, man, probably for like 2 years after I got out of jail, anytime I heard national anthem, I got upset. It doesn't bother me to hear it now. But there for like 2 years, I couldn't listen to it without it getting upset. I guess, there's experiences that, you take with you forever, and it's probably going to be some shit I'm going to have forever.
Well, it's definitely going to be a big mark on history. After a few months of us doing it, it seemed like it really took off throughout the whole country. It became like a staple. People started writing about it and talking about it, and a lot of it went viral. The whole 9 o'clock singing the anthem thing, it really took off, and then Trump started doing it. So it definitely had an impact.
Yeah, it did. I don't know if you knew, but there was a documentary called Day of Outrage.
Yeah.
Okay. It was on, I don't know if it was on one of the apps on your TV, and they pulled it off there. But you can still buy the CD, and we watched it. Well, my wife and I, we watched it, and we tried to watch it. We got about 3/4 of the way through it, and my wife's get upset, and my wife, she's tough. She's tougher than a hobo turd, and she got upset. Like she's tough, man. She got upset watching that, and I'm like, all right, and then we shut it off because they show conditions of the jail. It's called Day of Outrage. I don't know if you've seen it, but I've got the DVD. It's still wrapped up in cellophane. I never even opened it, but it's at my house, and I don't know why I'm hanging on to it, but I ended up buying it. But yeah. We went through some shit, man, and I don't know how you guys did it for so long and able to still function. So hats off to you guys. I got, hats off to y'all.
We're also tougher than hobo turds.
That's tough, man. You know what they eat? Yeah.
What do you remember what cell number you were in?
Man, I got moved around a few times. I want to say I was in 17,
At one point, I was down there. I've got it all wrote down. I've got kind of like a journal or whatever I wrote in. But I was moved several times, and that was another thing. Anytime you would move, it psychologically it screws me up. I don't like it. I don't know what it is, but when you go to a jail cell and you're in there for a week or whatever, that's kind of your home. Like every little crease in the wall, and then whenever they moved you, it for me it screwed me up every time they moved me. I would be depressed for like 3 or 4 days, like seriously depressed, and I don't know if they're doing that shit on purpose or if anybody else still was affected like that. But anytime they moved me, it messed me up. But I think I was in 14 and 17. I moved a little bit. They give us a tablet. Sometimes. If we acted right, they would let us use a tablet for a couple hours. Well, there were certain jail cells, that the tablets didn't work in because the Wi-Fi signal didn't work in them. And I ended up in one of these cells where the signal didn't work. So it was like a Friday, and I got this tablet, and they just moved me to this cell, and I'm like, "Oh, this ain't gonna work. My tablet's not gonna work here. I can't communicate with my wife." And so what I did is I took a trash bag and put it in the toilet and flooded the cell, and so they'd be forced to move me, and because they won't let you stay in there if the toilet's not working. And my dumb ass does it on a Friday, and the maintenance guys don't come in there during the weekend, so I had to deal with that till Monday. So I didn't think that through, man.
Good job.
So yeah, I was tiptoeing around toilet water for 3 days. But Monday rolled around, and they said we can't call maintenance because the maintenance not here till Monday. And well, you don't need maintenance, dude. You know what I mean? But I guess it was my own fault. But I was trying to do what I could do to be able to communicate to my family. But yeah, so I was moved. Like I said, I was moved a few times.
That's good.
I want to say 14 and 17 sound familiar, but
I feel like I remember you being in 14. I remember you being, because after 14, like the wall juts out, and
yes.
And so I was in 16. Curcio. So like first it was McCall. I don't know if you remember McCall Calhoun, the old man that was a lawyer.
Yeah, Pops. Yeah, he hurt his shoulder in there.
Yeah, he was in 15. He left, and then Samsel was in there. He got moved, of course, and then Curcio got put in there. But 14, I feel like I remember you being on the other side of Curcio for a while. A while,
yeah,
relative, but
right next to me was Doug Jensen. Right next to me was Doug Jensen. So I want to say I was at 14, and he was in 15. And like you said, the wall turned after that. It was flat, and it kind of went on a 30-degree angle. But yeah, who else? Yeah, like I said, Ryan Samsel, when of course they moved him, when they moved him, everybody kind of shifted down. And then after that happened with Ryan, they moved everybody. They moved everybody around after that happened.
That's funny. I was in cell 16 literally the entire time I was in DC for a year and a half. I never moved. And after you left, I'd say after about a year, people started moving their cells all the time just because they wanted to. They didn't even, because people were like popping their cell doors and stuff, and the guards stopped even caring. And so people just started changing their cells like musical chairs. It was kind of like funny. It was almost bizarre. It was like the inmates were running the asylum, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we were as much of a threat to these guards. Was there any? I don't remember anybody bickering amongst each other with the J6ers. There's a few times, Big O would get on people's nerves, but like I don't think anyone. I didn't see anything violent between us inmates.
On the other side of the jail, it was. I mean, you remember the guards would sleep at this mahogany desk in the middle of the unit, and then on the other in Gen Pop though, they have to sit behind this like control center with a big plastic bubble around it because they'll hurl like shit and piss at the guards. So it was like totally different environment. We were not a threat at all. No, not even close. They literally, I mean, towards the end of it, dude, they would like the whole unit was out for rec at the same time towards the end of it, at least towards the end of my time there. And the guards literally would just sleep head on the desk. Out, and we're all out in the open.
Yeah, they weren't bashful at all. Huh?
No, guards started coming to the unit because they wanted to be there. They would I don't. Do you remember Abdullah?
He's a South African guy.
No, he was native black, but native black. He was American black guy. He was cool. Like he started basically just letting us out all day. He didn't have to, and I don't think he actually was supposed to, but he didn't care. Like he would just come to the unit. He would work the unit for overtime. Like a lot of the guards just started coming there because they knew they could fucking just clock out, like sleep. They could just chill, and it was like zero risk. So,
right, we're gonna sneak around and have church together. You know what I mean? Yeah.
These fucking racist terrorists are gonna say a prayer for me.
I know, it was crazy. You'd go in there. You go in a medic or anything like that. You pass in the other pod. They would just be in there raising hell like a bunch of animals. And then you come to ours, and it's like a library in there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's total bullshit. But what was it? What was it like after the fact? I mean, you're out on bond. You have your quote unquote freedom again, but it's not really freedom usually. So, like, what was your life like in terms of your restrictions after that?
So, when I was in court and the judge said that he was going to grant me bond, my wife got on a plane. She said, "I'll be there. I'll be there, and I'll be there tonight. I'm going next flight out of Houston." So she drove to Houston. I'd already talked to my wife and say, "Look, if I do get bond, they're probably not going to let me get on the phone anymore because they're going to retaliate." So I said, "Look, we all had 3 different places we were going to meet because I knew I'd be on foot." I said, Washington Monument, the biggest, tallest thing in D.C. I can see it from just about anywhere. That will be like the number 2 place we're going to go. I said, number 1 place we're going to go, we'll meet. If I can get a ride, we're going to meet at the rental car place at the airport. Because most shuttles will take you to a rental car place from a motel. All I have to do is just, try to get in one. But I said, if I can't get in, if I can't get to the airport, I'll be at the Washington Monument. So go to the Washington Monument. If I'm not there, go to the cemetery across the street from the jail. I'll be there. I'm going to be in one of these 3 places. And so I get out. I ended up, I made it to the airport where they had the rental car place. My wife and I found each other. And then she booked a room. We, I spent the night there in D.C. Next morning we get up, went to the airport, get ready to fly home. And I was stopped by security, and apparently I was on a no-fly list. I was not authorized to travel in the United States. So that was like the first wake-up call. It's like, well, I'm not allowed to fly. Okay, well, I'll just rent a car. But the government or whoever, all my credit cards were shut off. All my wife's credit cards were shut off. We had a business account with I had an Amex with an unlimited credit line. It was shut off. All my credit cards were shut off. So renting a car was near impossible without having a credit card. But we managed to do it. Managed to get a rental car. We got back to Houston. I lost all my work credentials. I had a TWIC card. I had security clearance to go inside the refineries and stuff. I had lost all that. I was now a domestic terrorist. I was on a no-fly list, FBI watch list. I couldn't go back to work. Like I said, all my credit cards were canceled. My Uber account, my Airbnb account, my every
every account I had, I still to this day can't rent an Airbnb. Everything was frozen or disabled. And they did this like snapping their finger. So finding a job or going back to my normal job, wasn't going to work. I also had travel restrictions, so I couldn't go outside of 100 miles from my home without permission, which I wasn't complaining about that because I wasn't in jail. So basically what I had to do, I work in oil and gas my whole life, so I just had to go work in a sector of that industry that didn't do background checks, the pipeline industry, and upstream work, like the oil field the drillers and the pipelines. They'll hire anybody, and that's where I had to go. So I had to start traveling for work. I had to get permission every time I would go on a job, but really screwed up my whole way of making a living. And even still to this day, I'm, I live in Livingston, but I work in Houston. So I stay in Houston throughout the week, and I go home on the weekends. So I'm still not able to sleep in my own bed at night, except for the weekends.
Pretty much like upended your whole way of living. Even though you were home, technically, you weren't really. And then pretty much, I mean, did you have any sense of normalcy at all besides being able to see your family occasionally?
Yeah, in Texas, J6 defendants are not considered terrorists. I don't want to say we're celebrities. It's not the right word, but a lot of people in Texas have supported what their interpretation of what happened, and I was fine with in the public eye in Texas. Now, as far as working goes, it was extremely hard. It's extremely hard to try to get a job whenever I've been doing this my whole life, and now all of a sudden I can't pass a background check. Like I said, I ended up having to go take a couple of courses to get certified in some different. I had to get some different certifications so I could apply what I know, in the pipeline side, and so. Luckily, I found a consulting company in Longview that was able to work with me and overlooked the security deal, and they hired me and they've kept me working since 2023. So, I mean, I owe this company a lot. They really done me a solid. And now that I've been pardoned, now my phone's blowing up. Now all these companies want me to come back to work, but I'm going to stay loyal to this company that out of Longview that stood by me and helped me. But
gave you a shot. Yeah,
I'm still making good money, but I've always made money. I've always made money, but it's just a little bit different now. Because I can't go home and just get a job close to my house now. I have to travel.
So what was in the aftermath of, you were in jail, you got bond, you're out now. From this point on, what are the developments with your case? Do you decide to go to trial? Do you take a plea deal? Whatever choice you make, what's the logic that leads you down that path? Because everybody has different reasons for how they decide to adjudicate their case.
Yeah, that's a good question. We looked at all the options. You can take a plea deal. Now, the plea deal they offered me was bullshit. Like, they wanted me to plead guilty to the obstructing an official proceeding and plead to one other felony, and they were going to drop the assault charge. Because the assault charge, I said, well, I'm not going to get convicted for the assault charge anyway, because I never touched anybody. I never even, other than having a verbal conversation with one officer, and my indictment didn't even list the officer's name. So I'm like, they're just scaring me with that one. So I'm not taking this plea deal. But I know if I go to trial, and based off of what I've been watching, With the federal government, they have a 98% conviction rate or something, some crazy number like that. They're never wrong, or at least they never lose. I won't say they're never wrong.
Or they'll get you on something.
Yeah, they'll get you on something. So it's, well, if I go to court and fight it, I know I'm going to lose. I'm fine with losing. But I've got to look at it as how can I drag this out as long as possible? Because there is this one little tiny bit of hope that if in some crazy world Donald Trump runs for president and then he gets nominated and then he actually wins, that there's a slight chance that we might actually get a pardon from this guy. Like it's a huge Hail Mary. Like there's no way it's going to happen, but this is all the hope we got. Like this is, like I said, Hail Mary shot. And I said, the third option for trial or for my court would have been to agree to a stipulated bench trial. And the way it was explained to me is basically you plead no contest. I said, well, I don't want to lose my right to appeal because I'm certainly going to appeal because they're talking about putting me in prison for 20 years. And they said, well, no, if you plead guilty, you'll lose your opportunity to appeal. I said, okay. So we decided to go with this stipulated bench trial where we agreed to stipulated facts. And, they wrote, we basically went back and forth with prosecution on what we were calling facts and what they were calling facts. And it had the prosecution had a funny way of framing something. Like, I knew I didn't assault anyone, but what the charge said, assault, resisting, or impeding certain officers. That's the way it was worded. Well, when it says or, that don't mean and. So it could be one of those three things: assault, resisting, or impeding. I said, well, I didn't do any of those things. They said, well, if you were standing in the doorway, you could have been impeding someone's exit. I'm like, okay, now that's a stretch. So now I'm impeding an officer that may be at the door that I don't know. So I was like, well, that's a stretch. I don't think I'm going to be found guilty on that. But turns out I was. Went to court. I was found guilty on everything. Obstructing an official proceeding, which is the statute which talks about tampering with witnesses or tampering with evidence, destroying evidence to hide a crime. Like, there's no way. And I was found guilty on that. I was found guilty on assaulting 5 officers. And they still did not give me the names of the officers, even at court, whenever I'm supposed to be able to face my accusers. I was denied that, even after we asked for it multiple times. Like, how can I even appeal this if I don't even have officers' names? And then the other one was like a disorderly conduct or a civil disorder, which I'm not sure how walking into a building for 3 minutes and 15 seconds constitutes a civil disorder, but apparently it does. So I was found guilty, and I was waiting on a date to get my sentencing. In that time frame, Fisher, if you remember the Fisher case, where Fisher,
the 1512 was overturned in the Supreme Court.
Right. So he, I don't know what you call it, he's filed suit or initiated the court or summoned them or whatever it is called, the 1512. Well, since I was found guilty on that, we were able to convince our judge, like, well, let's wait until we see what the Supreme Court's going to say about the 1512 before the sentencing is done, because I'll have to get sentenced twice. And the judge like, okay, we'll do that. Well, that trial ended up lasting a long time, maybe a year. I don't know. It lasted a long time. And they didn't come up with a decision until just about a year ago. I think it was a year ago, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was like June. It was June of 24. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw it on our Facebook as that was an important day for us. Whenever Supreme Court overturned that charge, and I'm like, oh, this is great. This means all I have is this bullshit assault charge. So I'm going to get sentenced for this. I'm going to show the judge I didn't the judge knows I didn't touch anyone. It shouldn't be that bad. I've already been in jail for 3 months. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. And then went to court. And we went through the whole spiel where we're supposed to apologize. And you know, I'm horrible at apologizing. You can ask my wife. If I apologize to you, it just makes you mad. I'm just terrible at it. And I was truly sorry for the pain that it caused my family. But I can't sit here and apologize for assaulting people that I didn't assault. I mean, how can I give you an apology for that? But anyway, we went through this song and dance, and then the judge, when he got done reading all the script, because they gave us a script before we got in there. They said, this is what the judge is going to say. And this was 3 pages. I read this whole thing right before I go into court. And then, of course, the last page, it says, I find the defendants guilty on all charges. Like, it was already written on a piece of paper before we went in there. And, like, hell, I could have done this from Texas. I mean, I'm already guilty. So I go in there, and that's what he said. He said, yeah, we're guilty on all charges. And then they like I said, they were going to set the date for the sentencing. But our boy Fisher stretched that out. So I ended up going back to court for my sentencing hearing. And like I said, I go in there, do the apology thing, and the judge went on this 15-minute rant about how it is a fact that Donald Trump lost the election. It is a fact that Joe Biden won the election. And it is a fact that January 6th was an insurrection. This guy called me an insurrectionist in court. And the judge did. And he said, the only patriots in this whole January 6th scenario are the January 6th committee and Nancy Pelosi and all these people. And he was saying that Donald Trump needs to be put in jail. Like, he went totally off script. Like, he went off on Donald Trump and the Republicans. Anybody that supports Donald Trump needs to be held accountable. Anybody that tries to erase history. Like, I asked for the transcript for this, and I never received it. But it was so biased, and it was so scripted. Like, it was terrible. I mean, he was bringing up headlines that he saw on the news, had nothing to do with my case. Nothing. And that's what he said. I'm giving you 26 months in prison, and then some probation and some fines and whatnot. And then we were blown away. So now I'm going to prison for 2 years. And that was in December of 24. And we go home, and January couldn't get there fast enough. It was December or January, I don't remember. But January could not get there fast enough. Donald Trump won. He'd already won the election. So all we're doing is waiting now to see if we're going to get pardoned. And it was kind of up in the air for a while. Trump was saying, we're going to pardon the nonviolent offenders. And I'm like, well, if you look at my case, I was violent as shit. I assaulted 5 officers. I'm like a fat John Wick running up the stairs and whooping up on these people. Like, come on. Like, I'm 40-something years old with high blood pressure, overweight. No, I didn't sprint up the stairs and do all this bullshit. But if you look at my statement of facts and you look at these headlines, it sounds like I was brutal. Mm. And we were nervous. And then, man, Donald Trump, man, he first day, we were sitting on our couch watching him as he signed that piece of paper, and gave my life back. So, it was something. It was something to see. Crazy.
Yeah. It was definitely the Hail Mary worked.
I could not believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. My mother, she's a real religious lady, and she's from Louisiana. How ladies from Louisiana, and she's like, I just believe it in my heart that this is all gonna go away. I'm like, Mother, quit! You're in denial. Like, I'm going to prison. I'm gonna be a felon for the rest of my life. Lost all my grandfather's guns that he gave me. Like, my whole life is over. And no, I believe it. I believe it's all going to go away. I was like, no way. And then, and then January 21st, it all went away. It was unbelievable.
How was, you just mentioned her, and then of course I'm remembering the situation with how your house was raided and how your wife and daughter were treated. How has your family been affected by this ordeal throughout these years?
Honestly, my family, they know me and they know what kind of person I am, and they trust my judgment. And that I wasn't treated badly or anything from any of my family. I had nothing but support from my in-laws, my wife's parents, the grandparents. Like, everyone just supports, all the support you could imagine. They trust my judgment. They know who I am as a person on a day-to-day basis. They know that what they're seeing on TV is not me. So I had a tremendous amount of support from all my family. I had a few friends, close friends that I thought were friends, that kind of abandoned me because I don't know if they were scared. They thought that they might be targeted or what. But I can tell you, January 6th, I was able to separate. After January 6th, I was able to separate who my friends are and who my real friends are. And I'm sure you have too. You went through hell. You went through it too, man. And so you find out who your friends are. You know what I mean?
How did they even get you? I know there were, as you alluded to, there was this viral photo of you with blood dripping down your face. Were you identified because of public photos?
No. Well, I was identified because my cousin, while we were driving back home, he was all over social media bragging about things that had happened on that day. And someone turned him in, apparently. They say someone turned him in that he knows, but I think FBI watches the Facebook, and there may be words that they're able to, pinpoint certain conversations. And because I have a hard time believing that someone turned him in, but that's what we were told, that someone had turned in my cousin, and then my cousin was arrested, and he sang like a mockingbird. He didn't mind telling FBI everything they wanted to hear. And I guess I wasn't surprised with it. He's kind of a young kid, and maybe he was scared. I don't know, but basically, my cousin, my cousin the one who rolled over on me. It's the truth. But it is what it is. That don't change the fact that I did what I did. So I will say that the FBI, when they were interrogating me, the many times that they interrogated me, they were pretty leading with their questions. Like, they wanted you to answer a certain way, and it would help me out if I would answer certain questions a certain way. And I could see it. I would just tell them, I'm like, look, you're going to keep me, just take me to my jail cell. I'm done talking. I'm not talking until I get an attorney. And, one of my line of questionings is I know I have the right to remain silent, so I don't have to answer any questions, but I will cooperate. I will answer questions if I feel like, they're not going to incriminate myself. And, so they asked me, they said, how close did you get to the Capitol building on January 6th? I said, I don't want to answer that. They said, did you go inside the Capitol building? I said, I don't want to answer that. They said, did you go inside the Senate chamber? And I said, I did not go inside the Senate chamber. I said, in fact, when the doors of the Senate chamber came open, I was halfway to my car, going home. And in the statement of facts, they were trying to add on like perjury or something, whatever. I don't know what it was called, but they said on a question, the questions were, we asked Daniel Adams, did he go in the Capitol building? He said, no, I did not go in the Capitol building, that I went when the doors came open, I was halfway to my car. They had took the answer of one question and put it on a different question and were charging me for this. And whenever I read this on my statement of facts, I called my attorney. I said, Gary, this is not right. Like, I didn't say that. I don't remember the conversation, but I deal with contractors all the time, and I deal with contracts, and I know I would not say certain things. I know when to shut up. And I said, that's not right. He goes, well, it's right here. And they timestamped the video where you said it. I said, Garrett, go look at the video. He said, all right. And then he called me the next day and he said, man, you're absolutely right. They took the answer from one question that you gave and transcribed that onto a different question. And I was like, I told you. He said, we're going to make that go away. And I said, yeah. And then it got brought back up. Like, it went away on statement of facts. But then whenever they were doing the sentencing and the prosecution had like this closing statement opportunity, he even said it in the closing statement that Daniel Adams lied to the FBI whenever we asked him if he was in the building. And he said that, I was like, these worms, pieces of shit, they lie. They're sitting here lying to the judge. How can they lie? If I lie to the judge, I'm committing a crime. How can the prosecution be able to lie and get away with it when we have video proof that what they're saying is not right? And of course, they got away with it. But it is what it is. That's why they have a 98% victory rate. Whenever
that's the power of immunity. Yeah, they can't be held accountable for lying, unfortunately. Did you actually ever get your evidence so you could even build a case? Because I know in the beginning, in the jail, we didn't really have anything. It took months and months to actually get access to anything. So did you actually get to review the relevant evidence of your case?
Nothing. Not 1 second of video. I think that's not anything. Nothing. The only evidence that I was able to actually see was the evidence that I presented, like a motel receipt in Tennessee. Whenever I left the Capitol building and we started our way home, and it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe 6 o'clock, between 5 and 6. We were already in Tennessee, and I checked in a motel at that time. So I'm like, how can I be at the Capitol building when I'm in Tennessee? Because I left so quick and got the hell out of there so quick. And my ticket for the motel was my proof that, I used my credit card and I checked in a motel in Tennessee. Literally 3 hours after the Capitol was breached. So, I was able, but of course none of that mattered. None of that mattered. But no, I didn't have access to any of my discovery. And of course, when we were in jail, we had no access to a library, couldn't go to church, couldn't shave, no fingernail clippers, no outside. People went months without seeing the sunlight. No, it was not what I expected the justice system to run like.
Well, on that note, throughout this whole course, President Trump is in office now. Ideally, the weaponization of law that we saw for 4 years is gone, theoretically. In terms of what you did expect from the justice system and what you experienced, what changes in your perspective about America can you say actually occurred, if anything? Do you still see America as the same country?
No, I don't. It's sad to say, but the justice system is a weapon that can be picked up by whoever's in power, and it can be used against anyone that opposes that power. So it's just a matter of time before a corrupt government, whether it's Republican, Democrat, whoever, pick that weapon up again and use it against us. And it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. I think if the Democrats take back the power, I think they're going to go after They're going to go after a lot of conservative people. They're going to use the system. They did it before. It worked before. They got away with it. No one's been prosecuted. No one's been sued. There's no accountability for what happened. They're going to do it again. It's going to happen. Honestly, I don't want to be in this country if the Democrats are running it in fear of what's going to happen to me. I've been a political prisoner, and I've seen just how strong this machine can be, and I don't want it. I don't want that smoke, Tim. You know,
I don't want it.
I don't want that smoke, man. And I've seen it. Like I said, what's the end game? People are, we have a lot of J6ers that are, they're still, I hate to say it, but this is how they identify themselves as J6ers. So that's their identity now. Yeah. And I believe these people are going to get targeted if they don't shut the hell up. And this country shouldn't be about that. We should be able to raise hell when our government is operating outside the boundaries of the Constitution. We should be able to protest, but we can't. I've seen it. We can't. You can protest a lot of things, but you can't protest the government, or at least not the one side of the government.
Now, pardons or not, everybody's going to have a target on their back probably for the rest of their lives, I would imagine.
No doubt.
I'm going to give you I'm going to open the floor here. What would you say to anybody listening, really to America in general? What do you want them to know, whether it be about your journey specifically, about January 6th as a whole, that maybe we haven't covered?
There's going to be two things, because I know we're limited on time. There's going to be two things. One thing, through my incarceration and being alone and sitting in that box, you get a lot of time to think. You think about things. And we always see these riots, these protests turn into riots. They get violent, or BLM or Antifa or whoever. And we're conservatives, and we look at those people like they're terrorists, and they look at us the same way. And I'm sitting in that jail, and I wonder if those people were provoked like we were provoked. I wonder if BLM was peaceful people, and cops started shooting their kids in the face with tear gas. Maybe that's what that could have happened. I mean, almost like I would like to see and talk to some of these people on the other side that have been involved in these protests. This may be normal for the government to do this. They did it to us. They got away with it for us. Maybe some of these riots that we see are instigated by our government to create division. I mean,
stoke tension.
Yeah. I mean, it creates division. If, like, I'm not the leader of the J6ers by no means whatsoever. You're the tip of the spear on me, and but I wouldn't mind sitting down with some of these people and be like, hey, tell me what happened on your, did they do the same shit to y'all that they did to us? Is that why y'all burning cars? I mean, we didn't burn cars. That's not our MO, but, I guess if we went to a few more protests and things got out of hand, I'm sure it could probably evolve into something like that. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective, that maybe some of these people that are protesting on the other side, maybe they got provoked too. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They were able to get a reaction out of us, a baseball coach. True. And, real estate agents. I mean, cops, firefighters. These are the January 6ers. And then that's pretty much my way of thinking. And there's one other thing I want to mention is I met a guy in jail in Oklahoma that was a J6er. His name was Chris Grider, and he told me he was there he was there when Ashley Babbitt was murdered, and that's what it was murder. And he told me that he had done an interview, and in this interview, right after this happened, he told his version of his interpretation of what happened. And what he said to me is that that the guy that pulled the trigger, Michael Bird, when he murdered Ashley Babbitt, and that's what happened. That right before that, Chris could see through the door, through the glass or whatever, and he saw the sergeant in arms. Was it called the sergeant in arms? Michael, I don't remember his name, but the sergeant in arms had talked to Bird, leaned in, grabbed him, whispered something into his head, into his ear. Michael Bird then comes to the window, props up his pistol, waits for Ashley Babbitt to stick her head through there. And he shot her and killed her. And after he pulled the trigger, he stuck his head up and said, "Who's next?" That's what he said to the crowd. He said, "Who's next?" And this is a story that I'm telling, that I was told, that, you know, I wasn't there. This is what I've been told. And then I don't know if you know this or not, but the sergeant in arms, he retired the next day. He resigned the very next day. Michael Stinger, I'm looking up right now. Yeah. So, and Chris, they give him 7 years in prison over his crimes for January 6th. And this guy did not touch anything, break anything, assault anyone. But I believe because he gave that interview, that's why they threw the book at him. Now, I've been to this man's house. I've met his family. I've met his wife, his kids. He owns an orchard in Texas. Beautiful place. Christian guy, real religious. His whole family's real religious. You know, I believe anything that he tells me. He doesn't seem to me like a dishonest person. But I just think it's pretty messed up that this guy that pulled the trigger on Ashley Babbitt is never, he got away with it. And I believe that he was directed by the sergeant in arms, which he takes his orders from Nancy Pelosi. And that's just the pecking order of things over there. And like I said, he retired the next day. He resigned the next day. I think it's suspicious, and I wish I would like to see justice for Ashley Babbitt. She shouldn't have been. She shouldn't have been murdered. And there were others too, Roseanne Boylan and a few others that were killed that day, and I haven't seen any justice for these people. I'd like to, but it is what it is.
Yes, and it would be nice to get that kind of testimony. You know, that's something.
That testimony. That testimony landed him 7 years in prison.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
but
you know, when you consider it, and it's, you know, it's interesting because you had some of those officials in the Capitol that ended up, you know, taking their lives. We don't really know the real reason, but we keep getting blamed for it, and yet there's no real curiosity into what these people actually knew. You know, it would be interesting to see if it was linked maybe to that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which officers who was whispering to who about what? Well, I guess, you know, we're not going to know at this rate, but that is something I would like to know as well.
Well, the sergeant at arms was talking to Michael Bird before Michael Bird went propped up, like he would do on, you know, when you're deer hunting, waiting for an opportunity just to kill somebody, make an example.
Well, the fact he even said who's next, that's definitely that's a declaration of intent. That is murder. So yeah, that's not good. It wasn't good before, but with that little extra bit of knowledge, that's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Right. When you say who's next, like you said, you know, and there's no reason why this guy lied to me.
I believe him. Like I said, I've been to his home. We broke bread at his table. You know, and I knew that. And I knew this story. I knew this story. When he told me this when I was in jail in Oklahoma. So I sat on this. I haven't told a soul about this since then. You know what I mean? It's been 4 years I've been sitting on this, and I'm just wondering how many other defendants have information like this that they're sitting on.
Well, funny enough, Ryan Samsel, after he got moved out of the jail, he would send texts to me over that Getting Out app on the tablet. Mm-hmm. He would have someone basically send kites to me that way. And he had mentioned that there was this Antifa guy who broke the window where Babbitt got shot. His name was Zach Alam. And this Antifa kid, apparently he was with Samsel in PA when they first got arrested. They were cellies together. And Samsel had actually messaged me, and he told me that apparently the government offered, and again, I don't know if this is true. This is like hearsay of hearsay, but Samsel said that they offered Zach Alam a good, like they offered him a plea deal for whatever amount if he agreed to keep quiet about the fact that Officer Byrd was black. I don't know if that's true, because I certainly didn't know what his race was when I first heard about the shooting. I'd never even seen a lot of the video from then, but that's an interesting story if it's true. I mean, clearly Zach Lom didn't take the plea, didn't take that deal, whatever, or maybe he did. I don't know. There's a lot about that guy I can't really trust at face value, but
yeah,
but there's a lot that's just not known to me that I sure would like to know after all these years. It kind of impacted all of us to an extent.
Yeah, hopefully you can put some of this stuff together, and I don't think that. I don't think that anybody else other than Chris know. I don't know who else he told. Probably not very many people. The Oklahoma jail was kind of a scary place. There were people walking around pulling their hair out and talking to walls, and there was a few fights in there. And I mean, it wasn't a pleasant place. And he kept to himself for the most part. He had a Bible that we shared for the few days I was there. But yeah, and as far as Ryan Samsel goes, I like the guy. He's likable. He's a likable guy, and he's kind of funny. But I don't know if I would take everything he says, truthfully, because he kind of tells stories. But I know who to trust and who to question, and I don't want to say anything bad about anyone, but I don't believe everything I hear.
Sure.
But I do believe what Chris told me to be true.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to be careful about who you get your testimony from. Mike Curgio that we were locked up with, he told me, and it's always stuck with me. He was like, Tim, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see.
Yeah, Florida Mike. We called him Florida Mike. I called him Florida Mike because I didn't use anybody's real names. But I always liked Florida Mike. He had done some time before, and he was kind of showing us all the ropes and what to expect from the guards and whatnot. He helped out a lot of folks while we were in jail. And when I got out, I actually called his mother and let her know, that Mike was helping out a lot of people that needed help. So, I guess probably made her feel good, but I mean, it was the truth. But I like Mike. You're good people. Just done some dumb shit when he was younger, but we done dumb shit too.
Yeah. Well, his experience was definitely it was definitely a benefit to those of us who'd never been through that sort of thing. And I think his advice turned out to be very true, especially for me. being in there longer, and then even in prison later on, it was even more true, I suppose. But yeah, I'm grateful for the solidarity that did exist, at least in the for moments in the jail, because at the end of the day, it was us against the world. So that was the one upside of being in the DC jail, in that one little segregated unit, because at the end of the day, we still had each other. So
yeah, we did. We leaned on each other quite a bit. Some of these guys that get portrayed in the media as being, these crazy nut jobs. Dominic Pizzola, another one, just the sweetest guy. He's a family man. Like, he married his high school sweetheart, and they have a family. And like, when you look at him on TV, and it's like, oh, this guy's crazy as hell. That's not him. Like, get to know that guy. That's not him. It is what it is. The media can turn it any way they want.
Their lives have been really central to this entire conversation, whether it be, the question of the election, or whether it be the cover up of our treatments, or the suppression of, what we actually witnessed that day.
Yeah. And, I don't know if they did this with you, but they did it with me, and they did it with Doug Jensen, and did it with, I can't think of that curly-headed guy's name, but, they want to give us all these, medications for depression. They had us, they had us heavily medicated, throughout this process. We couldn't think straight. I guess we're willing to take medication whenever you're in a box for 23 hours, with no outside communication, no, nothing, no TV, no visits. Your family couldn't come see you. So people are going through some depression, and your options are, here, take these pills. And, I think there's probably some long-term effects on some of that. I'm glad I wasn't there as long as some of the other guys. Like I said, I was only in that shithole for two months. I couldn't imagine you guys that were in there for years.
I'm glad. If the alternative was you, I'm glad it was me. I'm glad that you did get out there. It's nobody should. I've heard people, basically have like a survivor's guilt sort of thing.
I was just about to say that. When we would leave, the whole pod would start banging on there. Congratulate. If you got out, you get your stuff, and you walk out in the middle of the pod, and you turn around, and like everybody banging on the doors, and they're yelling, congratulating you. And like, man, you want to be that guy that's getting out, but then when you're that guy, you're like, man, you feel terrible. It's like, I guess, survivor guilt or whatever, like you said. But yeah, it felt terrible leaving those guys behind. But there's some more psychological shit that they put you through, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a POW camp, It
was a POW camp.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that especially the military guys and Marines, especially the way they handle things, taking care of each other and whatnot,
Well, it was a blessing, and it's funny. That's actually a great way to close out. Is you mentioning the way we would sign, the way we would send people off. Yeah, I remember we would sing the national anthem, and we would just start screaming USA, USA as people would walk out. And I was always, even though it wasn't me, no matter who it was, I was so grateful that it was happening. There was actually, to be in there, there was nothing better than to watch someone walk out. So it's a different perspective. So, but I agree. It was a really special thing. And it didn't always happen, of course, to see somebody getting bail and being able to leave that shithole. it just gave you hope, and that was it was just a great thing. And Dan, I'm so happy that you did get out. I'm so happy that I can't say we can't say that you got away from all of this unscathed, but at the same time, I'm glad that Hail Mary worked.
Yeah, me too. We're all grateful for that. I'd be in prison right now. I'd be in Bastrop, Texas right now, in a prison cell right now.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump hadn't done what he said, and the Americans hadn't come out and showed up and voted for him. So maybe there is a little bit of hope left in the country. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm not saying I'm glad that it happened, but I am saying that I'm a better man today than I was then. I've really improved myself as a person on my own. I didn't need the court to tell me to do it; I just did it, and now I'm in a line of work that I'm actually making almost double the money that I was making before I was arrested. I just have to travel, but I am better off today. Of course, if it wouldn't have been for that pardon, then I wouldn't be able to say that.
Sure. And I'm glad things are actually working out really well for you, and I hope that things only continue to get better. And right now, my hope is that the truth comes out, that we get a little bit more of it, and that's all I can really hope for at the time being. But I'm happy that things have worked out for you. I'm definitely grateful that you were willing to share your story with me.
Well, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. Trying to record all these events and piece together what really happened. I don't know if you're I don't know what you plan on doing with the information, but I sure hope we can share it with the world.
100%. 100%. We all deserve it. We deserve to get the truth out. And if someone had even one day of their life ruined because of this, I want their story out and I want the truth out. This whole thing started because they kept suppressing the truth. And the truth is the only thing that's gonna fix this in the long run. And I couldn't be more grateful to you for helping me do that.
Well, yes, sir. I'm glad I can do my part, as small as it is. But feel free to reach out to me again if you have more questions. I've got plenty more stories. I know we're limited on time, but it's been an experience.
You have a good night. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
You as well. Godspeed.
All right.